Good Shabbos. This week's portion is Parshas Vayechi. It's the end of the book of Bereshis. It's also the end of the story of Yosef and his brothers. And we, the readers, would probably like it to be a story which ends happily, and they lived happily ever after. But when you read the story, it doesn't seem to be that way. After Yaakov dies, it says that the brothers sent a message to Yosef that their father commanded them, saying, please make sure that you forgive the spiteful deed of your brothers because they have done you evil, and please make sure that you forgive the servants of your father's God, that you shouldn't really punish them. And then the brothers come themselves and they bow down or fall down before their brother and say, Hineni l'chol avadim, we will be to you as slaves, as servants. And Yosef answers, don't be afraid, kitachas alakimoni, I am not in place of God. You might have had a bad intention, but God had a good intention, and everything will be fine, and we'll live in peace with each other. And if you think about it, the question is, was this the truth that their father Yaakov had commanded them in such a way? So Rashi assumes that it's a lie, that Yaakov would have never thought that Yosef would do harm to his brothers, and therefore they were lying. They lied because of Shalom Bayis. You're allowed to lie in order to keep peace, because they were afraid. And the question would be then, well, if Rashi's right, then why would Yosef believe that? If Yosef thought, like the rabbis, that Yaakov would never, for a moment, consider the fact that Yosef would take revenge against them. So a simple reading of this shows that there's still a lot of problems within the family. We don't even know if Yaakov was aware of the sale of Yosef. The Torah never addresses that, and commentaries debate the issue. Simply, the way the Torah reads, he didn't even know, and therefore he wouldn't have commanded them. And if he did, then it means that he was really suspicious of Yosef, that he would take revenge. And the brothers, the fact that they were fearful after 17 years of living together with Yaakov and the brothers, and this is sort of real history, they were still afraid that there would be revenge. And Yosef, he, on the other hand, says, Hatachas alakimani, am I in place of God? You intended to do evil. And it's clear that Yosef never actually says, you know what, I forgive you. He doesn't forgive them. He just says, God intended it for good. But he sounds like he's still upset or angry or would have a right to take revenge, but he's not taking revenge. At the end of the day, this story is not ending where they live happily ever after. The way I would have written the story and to make that happen would be after 17 years, all was forgiven and forgotten. They realized they loved each other. They used to visit Friday nights and have Shabbos dinner together, right? We could have written this many different ways. But the Torah seems to be okay with ending the story of Yosef and the brothers with dysfunction at this point. They're still afraid. Yosef is still perhaps even lying to them because he does seem to be upset in the beginning when he treats them as spies. And even now he's just saying that you had intention to do evil to me, without saying, as I mentioned before, that he doesn't say he forgives them. So the Torah seems to be okay with divisiveness and disunity, and perhaps even a certain amount of dysfunction. The question is, as I point out very often, does the dysfunction or disunity create a division so great that you cannot live as a family? And the beauty of this story is that the Torah is not expecting us to not to have differences. The Torah is not expecting us not to have arguments, not to be upset, not to be angry, not to be jealous. The question is, what do you do with it? The question is how you act. And in a sense, what it's saying is we sometimes have to look past the divisions, look past our anger, our jealousy, our complaints, the problems that we've had with our family or friends. We have to be able to say, let's live in peace anyway. Let's try to somewhat paper it over and make sure that, as Yosef says, don't worry, I will sustain you for all this time. And he actually asked his brothers, as Yaakov asked Yosef, please make sure to take me up to the land of Israel. And they seem to do that, because at the end, they don't actually do it, but Moshe, it says, Vayikach Moshe atzmos Yosef, Moshe took the bones of Yosef. So his wish was carried out by the descendants of the other brothers. And I think that's something we have to learn for ourselves, the obvious lesson for us, but it's true even in Israel today. You know, before October 7th, divisions in Israel were great. And after the war started, there seemed to be some unity. But we kind of all knew that that unity will only last for a while. And even though the war is still raging on, there's already disunity. There's disputes within the government. There's a question of bringing back judicial reform. There's all kinds of issues in Israel. And they will rise once again. It would be nice if we thought that eventually there'll be so much peace and love that there'll be no divisions, that everyone will agree with everything that everybody else wants in amongst the Jewish people or in the state of Israel. But perhaps what we have to realize is no, that the beauty of the land of Israel, the beauty of the Jewish people, and the beauty of the state of Israel today is that with all of the divisions, with all of the machlokas, with all of the problems that we have, with all of the disunity, with all of the jealousy, and even maybe hatred, we're still able to live together as one nation. And that's what's really important. We have to make sure that our weakness doesn't give strength to our enemies. And if we are careful in making sure that we never let divisions completely tear us apart, but rather we fight together as a family and fight with each other as a family, then there's a future for Israel, there's a future for the Jewish people, and eventually we could see the coming of Mashiach where there's more peace, but never a peace where there's no machlokas. As I like to often quote the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that a machlokas l'shem shemayim, an argument, division, which is for the sake of heaven, sofa l'hiskayim, will it will continue. It doesn't say the argument will dissipate. No, the argument will continue. But if you're l'shem shemayim, and that's maybe an important part, is that we have to make sure that we're for the sake of heaven. And I understand that not everyone who's arguing everything for their own particular needs is doing so for the sake of heaven, but perhaps the ability to overcome that division, that's what l'shem shemayim. You could still do that for the sake of heaven. You realize that you have to survive, and the way to survive is to make sure that you don't let those divisions tear us apart. And that's true in the state of Israel, it's true in our own families, true amongst ourselves. It's beautiful to think that everyone's going to just have a loving, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're able to control ourselves and control those arguments to the degree which we could live together as one family. Good Shabbos.